I don't know why I took her. I mean, I don't even like dolls. There was just something about her sitting in that dusty, cluttered antique shop window, staring out at me with those glassy blue eyes. She wore a faded blue dress with frayed lace trim and had long, wiry curls the color of aged mahogany. A crack ran down her cheek and her eyes seemed too big for her tiny face, lending her an unsettlingly lifelike gaze. I hadn't intended to stop in that shop at all, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me, waiting. So I went in. The old woman at the counter didn't ask me any questions, only raised her eyebrows as if to say, "Are you sure?" when I pointed to the doll. I don't think she even named a price. She just handed her over with a silent look that felt almost as sympathetic. I took the doll home and put her on my dresser. A silly thing, really. But I figured she'd make an odd sort of decoration, a conversation piece. Maybe a Halloween gimmick. But the more I looked at her, the less she felt like something that could be ignored. That night, lying in bed, I could feel her eyes on me. It sounds ridiculous, but I swear it was like there was a faint presence in the room, as if I weren't alone. I got up and turned her around, so her back was to me, and returned to bed, laughing at myself. But the feeling didn't go away. Instead, it grew. At some point, I drifted off into a fitful sleep. I kept dreaming of tiny footsteps shuffling around my room, of someone breathing just inches from my face. In one of these dreams, or perhaps it was a half-awake state, I felt something soft brushing against my cheek, like small cold fingers. I jolted awake, but my room was silent, still. The next morning, she was turned back around, facing me, her eyes locked onto mine. I laughed it off as I dressed for work. Maybe I'd just forgotten to turn her around, I reasoned. But deep down, the laughter felt hollow. That wasn't all. The doll's face seemed different, somehow. There was a new, faint scratch near the crack on her cheek. I told myself I was just imagining it. But things continued to change. That night, I turned her around again, determined to forget the strange feeling and just get some sleep. But when I woke up, she was facing me, her eyes seeming even brighter, more alert. I could swear her lips had curled into a tiny, almost mocking smile. And the scratch on her cheek was gone. Over the next few days, I started hearing things. Scratches in the walls, faint whispers in the corners of my room, like an old radio tune too static. I'd lie awake, listening, and every time I looked, she was there. Staring at me, I was sure her eyes grew larger, her mouth more defined, almost as if she were changing, taking on life. The dreams got worse. I would see her in my mind, moving, walking on her tiny, stiff legs, her joints creaking with each step. Sometimes she would reach up to me, her small hands pressing down on my chest, holding me in place, while her lips formed soundless words I could not understand. Each morning I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. And every morning she was there, perfectly still, perfectly lifeless, just a doll. By the end of the week, I started locking her in my closet at night. But even that didn't help. I'd still hear her in my dreams, moving around, shuffling. And then one night, I woke up to the sound of scratching, directly above me. My heart thundered as I lay there, paralyzed, listening. It was faint, but unmistakable, like tiny fingernails tapping and scraping at the ceiling above my bed. And then I heard it, a soft giggle, barely more than a whisper, coming from inside the closet. I froze, my mind racing, trying to rationalize it. Dolls can't move. Dolls don't laugh. But the sound was real, too real. My pulse thundered as I reached for my bedside lamp, half expecting her to be right there on my bed, staring at me. But no, she was still in the closet. But I could feel her presence even from across the room. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I was exhausted. Shadows clung beneath my eyes, and every creak in the house made me jump. I decided to get rid of her, to take her back to that antique shop and demand an explanation. But when I tried, the shop was closed. I banged on the door until a man in a nearby shop came out and told me that the store had been closed for years. No one had rented the space in ages. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I had no choice but to take her back home. That night, I tried something different. I locked her in my attic, wedging the door shut with a chair. I even stuffed a towel in the crack beneath the door, desperate to shut out her presence. But it was no use. The scratching started again, louder this time, like she was throwing her whole weight against the door, trying to get out. Then came the whispers, seeping through the cracks, filling my room, my mind. It was as though she were inside me, her voice scratching at the edges of my sanity. I couldn't stand it anymore. I jumped out of bed and yanked open the attic door, ready to throw her out once and for all. But she wasn't there. Only a small dusty trail leading back down to my bedroom. And then I heard her voice, clear, unmistakable, whispering from the shadows, right behind me. "You took me, now you're mine." I spun around, but she wasn't there. Only her faint laugh, echoing down the hall. And as I backed into my room, I saw her, standing on my bed, her eyes gleaming with a life of their own, her mouth pulled into that tiny, mocking smile. I felt frozen in place, her presence pressing down on me, filling the air like thick smoke. The last thing I remember is her small, cold hands reaching up toward my face, pulling me down toward her, whispering promises I could barely understand. Now, I'm not sure where I am. Sometimes I can feel myself, somewhere dark and hollow, like a shadow in the corner of a room. I catch glimpses of my own reflection, my own face, twisted, warped. And every so often, when the light hits just right, I see her, sitting on my dresser, her eyes gleaming, her smile just a bit wider. But now I realize it's my eyes she's staring through, my mouth she's smiling with,